Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie, but last night she said to me when we were watching telly.
My biggest fear right now is how quick American patriots crumbled and hid in their homes because their government told them that they should. We can't hide in our homes and not produce for our families and for future generations because of a virus that may kill us. So what do I say to the science? I say I don't believe your science because I believe my God.
Some people are here because of genuine fears about job losses and economic recession. Others are also here to push views on perennial American issues, always ready to voice their distrust in authority, disregarding the medical experts.
If asymptomatic people go back to work, they could infect other people who could die.
Okay, that's an interesting hypothesis.
It's a fact.
Yeah, sure it is.
You don't believe that? That's science. That's indisputable.
That's interesting. If they're asymptomatic, how do they know that they have it or don't have
Well,
it?
they don't. That's the point.
So it's mysterious. So it's just this thing that they're saying.
So what, is this all a big conspiracy theory?
It's your conspiracy theory.
Now to wearing masks or not. Robert in Lowestoft. Would you, Robert? Good morning.
No, absolutely not. I think the nation needs to press the reset button, Nick. You know, we've gone through this stage, and as far as I'm concerned, I'll give you a bit of Latin that's possible. But vive in gladio morientur. We should live by the sword and die by the sword.
Oh, what? That's ridiculous.
How can it be ridiculous?
What,
That's what we should be doing.
Just let vulnerable people die.
Well, they're going to die anyway. We're all going to die. You're going to die. I'm going to die. We'll all die.
So we just hasten the departure of people's parents and grandparents, do we?
No, we don't actually. No.
Well, hang on. You just said live by the sword, die by the sword. I'm suggesting that those who are vulnerable should be provided with masks.
What we perhaps should have done, and again, hindsight, excuse that, but we should have told the elderly people to, obviously stay indoors, but the rest of us, we just carry on. This country can't sustain the cost of no one working. That's not right.
Well, no, I agree with you. No, now I agree with you that we really have got to look to... No, but the way you first characterised it was a little bit more, shall we say, a degree more bravado.
Maybe so, but I mean, it's actually, it is how it is. That's what life is.
Well,
do you not think so?
The cost will be borne by my children's yet unborn grandchildren, and they'll still be paying for this.
No, possibly so. I don't know, but I think what I tried to say, and I do apologise if I came across in the wrong way, but
that's all right.
We need to press the reset button and look at where we are.
Yeah.
And get on with it, right? So we don't need masks. There's no need for masks.
Well, for the elderly, we must look after our elderly and our vulnerable.
Hang on a second, right? My local hospital, which is James Padgett, right? I'm going to give you some stats, right? My local hospital, James Padgett Hospital, which caters for probably about 250,000 people in my area, has had 45 deaths.
Right. Well, you're very fortunate.
No, listen to me.
No, I don't think Suffolk is one of the hot spots. It's in
40
places...
of them were over 70.
Right.
So where did they get infected? How did that happen?
They're still entitled to a life.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that, but 40 of them are over 70. They're not in bars. They're not in airports.
No.
They're not mingling with people. They're not in restaurants.
But doesn't that show you the potency of the virus in that it stays alive on some surfaces for 72 hours? So that poor chap or lady just has to touch a park bench and boom, they're gone. Robert, look after yourself. Thank you, I think.
There's been a lot of coverage of remarks the President of the United States made on live television last night as he updated America on coronavirus. In the recent past, the President has suggested people try unproven drugs as a possible treatment. What have you got to lose, he had said. Well, last night, the President suggested that people could receive injections of disinfectant to cure coronavirus.
Thank you very much. So I asked Bill a question that probably some of you are thinking of if you're totally into that world, which I find to be very interesting. So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said That hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do, either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that, too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number in the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful. The new headline is Trump asks people to go outside. That's dangerous. Here we go. Same old group. You ready? I hope people enjoy the sun. And if it has an impact, that's great. I'm just hearing this, not really for the first time. I mean, there's been a rumor that, you know, a very nice rumor that you go outside in the sun or you have heat and it does have an effect on other viruses. But now we get it from one of the great laboratories of the world, I have to say. Covers a lot more territory than just this. This is probably an easy thing, relatively speaking, for you. I would like you to speak to the medical doctors to see if there's any way that you can apply light and heat to cure. You know, if you could. And maybe you can, maybe you can't. Again, I say maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm not a doctor. But I'm like a person that has a good you-know-what.
As the President said, he's not a doctor, but he's like a person that has a good you-know-what. Some people who are actual doctors have pointed out something very important, and I want to draw your attention to this. As BBC News reported, a pulmonologist, Dr. Vin Gupta, said, this notion of injecting or ingesting any type of cleansing product into the body is irresponsible and it's dangerous. Kasif Mahmood, a doctor in Charleston, West Virginia, tweeted, as a physician, I can't recommend injecting disinfectant into the lungs or using UV radiation inside the body to treat COVID-19. Don't take medical advice from Trump. John Barnes, a pulmonologist at Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital, warned that even breathing fumes from bleach could cause severe health problems. He told Bloomberg News, inhaling chlorine bleach would be absolutely the worst thing for the lungs. The airway and lungs are not made to be exposed to even an aerosol of disinfectant. Not even a low dilution of bleach or isopropyl alcohol is safe. It's a totally ridiculous concept. So the vital public health message we should all take, having heard the President's remarks, is you should ignore them and not follow them. His advice is dangerous. But what would cause the President of the United States to say such things on live television in the middle of the biggest public health crisis in living memory, in which thousands of his citizens are dying every day? A lot of people have been talking about this, trying to explain why the President would say something so stupid. I got to wondering whether there could be a medical explanation for the President's behaviour. Now, it's important for me to stress that, like the President, I'm not a doctor, but I'm like a person that has a good you-know-what. So I've been working on a theory of what happened yesterday, and after several minutes of Googling and lifting passages from websites, here's my diagnosis here on live radio, with my thanks to Wikipedia. In my opinion, the President appeared to be speaking from the final component of the gastrointestinal tract. I'm thinking of the internal sphincter and the external sphincter, which are circular muscles that normally maintain constriction of the orifice and which relaxes as required by normal physiological functioning. The inner sphincter is involuntary and the outer is voluntary. It's located behind the perineum. Judging by what we heard from the President, there's clearly a problem in this area of his body, and so I did some research as to how it might be cured. What treatments are there for problems in that area? And I thank the Mayo Clinic for this. Eat high-fibre foods. Eat more fruits, vegetables and whole grains. Use topical treatments. Apply an over-the-counter cream or suppository containing hydrocortisone, or use pads containing witch hazel or a numbing agent. Soak regularly in a warm bath or sitz bath. Take oral pain relievers. I stress again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm like a person that has a good you-know-what. I hope this helps.
Clarify your comments about injections of disinfectant. They're quite provocative.
I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you, just to see what would happen. Now, disinfectant for doing this, maybe on the hands, would work. And I was asking the question of the gentleman who was there yesterday, Bill, because when they say that something will last 3 or 4 hours or 6 hours, but if the sun is out or if they use disinfectant, it goes away in less than a minute. Did you hear about this yesterday? But I was asking a very sarcastic question to the reporters in the room about disinfectant on the inside. But it does kill it, and it would kill it on the hands, and that would make things much better. That was done in the form of a sarcastic question to the reporters.
But you were asking your medical experts to look into it. Were you being sarcastic with them?
To look into whether or not sun and disinfectant on the hands, but whether or not sun can help us. Because, I mean, he came in yesterday and he said they've done a big study. This is a study. This isn't where he hasn't done it. This is where they've come in with a final report that sun has a massive impact negatively on this virus. In other words, it does not live well with humidity, and it doesn't live well with sunlight, heat. It doesn't live well with heat and sun and disinfectant. And that's what I brought out, and I thought it was clear.
Good morning to you both.
Hello.
To the Health Secretary, exercise sickness obviously took place in 2016. Firstly, if you're following the science now, why wasn't the science followed then? And secondly, will you commit to publishing the findings of exercise sickness in due course, please?
This was a sort of dummy run that showed there were certain areas that needed attention, and has always been a point of contention for the media, at least, that we never actually saw Operation Sickness in full detail. Mr. Hancock.
Yes, I'm not sure why this is. Why the media? Why this is?
Did it not show that there were holes and that we needed more kit, and it wasn't acted upon?
And look, it was before I was Health Secretary.
Yes.
But I asked my officials to go back when this first came up in the press a few weeks ago, and check that everything that was recommended was done. And that's the assurance that I got. Everything that was appropriate to do was done. That's what I was told. It was before my time. What I can tell you,
everything Sickness pointed out, they acted upon, is what you were told.
That was appropriate to do. I think that, you know, the preparations that we had in this country were amongst the most extensive in the world. But of course, you can't prepare for a virus that is itself completely, new by its nature.
If they were so good, why in some instances in the early days were NHS workers having to wear bin bags?
Well, the answer to that is that we had, right at the start, we had enormous stockpiles of PPE, and the need to get the PPE from the stockpile to the front line is a massive logistical effort.
But Health Secretary, that's not a level of preparedness, is it, Health Secretary? Staff wearing a bin bag?
Well, no, of course not. But needing to operationalise that when the demand for PPE across the system, understandably, shot up in very short order. I think the head of the army has called it the biggest logistical challenge in 40 years. So, yes, we fully acknowledge that it's been imperfect.
Donald Trump didn't say inject yourself with a toilet duct.
He said, let's look at the idea.
Anything else. Look at the idea. And your guest from the New York Times suggested...
He's from NBC.
Donald Trump... okay, sorry.
That's right.
Suggested Donald Trump said, inject yourself with household cleaner.
He said it was something worth taking a look at.
You allowed the comment to pass. Donald Trump didn't say that. What Donald Trump suggested was if chemicals in cleaners killed the virus, if those chemicals could themselves be made human-friendly, could those human-friendly variants on the chemicals themselves be used on a virus killer?
Nick,
and as a concept, Nick, on a concept, that's not a bad idea, because iodine...
No, Nick. At the end of this conversation, I've got to actually say, for broadcast regulation reasons, I've got to urge people not to pursue this at home. Don't try injecting yourself with any sort of disinfectant. Do you not find it absolutely staggering that the President of the United States would suggest that, and then starts talking about Nobel Prizes, which journalists don't even win?
Okay, coming on to with that. Firstly, the idea about chemicals, park that.
Well, I tell you what, Nick, I'll come back to you. Let's listen to it. Here he is last week.
And I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside, or almost a cleaning, because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that.
There we are. So I think we now know where we are with disinfectant. And I have to say again, don't try this at home, Nick.
He said, interesting to check that. What he's suggesting is find out whether it works, and clearly whether it can be made human.
My dear fellow, it will kill you. You will kill yourself if you inject yourself with Harpic.
Which is why checks need done.
But why even float the idea? But let's come back. All right. Apparently he was being sarcastic, which is what a nation needs at a time like this. I mean, there's nothing better than a good dose of sarcasm where people are dying in their tens of thousands. We all need sarcasm.
That was a weak excuse. That was, say, a weak excuse. Never apologise with a weak excuse. Anyway, leaving that, going on to Pulitzer Prizes, his basic point is well made. The awards journalists got for the Russia inquiry have shown up to be misplaced.
But he's got the wrong award. And not only has he got the wrong award, he can't spell it.
That is academia laughing at it.
You don't think it's quite potent that the most powerful man on earth can't spell Nobel Prize?
I think his point was valid, albeit his spelling and his basic checks were wrong.
All right, Nick, I'm grateful. I have to say, don't try injecting yourself with cleansing fluid, as the president suggested sarcastically the other day. Let's see what you make of it. Anne in Bromsgrove, how do you think Trump has done? Good morning.
Hi, Nick. Well, he gives us all the titter many times. I understand all that. Yes, he does, because he isn't as eloquent as we expect most politicians to be. But I think this laboratory thing, didn't many of us think that right from the beginning anyway?
Well, it's one thing for us to think, for me and you. It's something else for the President of the United States to say he's seen evidence. Do you not think?
He has.
Well,
you know, I imagine they are looking into it. They're really looking into this now.
Well, this man has made a lot of claims in the past which have been found to be rather bare. Don't you think this now adds to the lunacy that 5G brought about coronavirus? And if you're not careful, you're going to have Chinese people being beaten up on the streets. One has to tread carefully in your President of the United States, don't you?
These people, we all know that it's the regime in China. Surely most of us know that anyway.
You don't believe it was a bat in a live market?
I don't think. Well, from what I heard last night, this virus had got to mutate between two animals to come to this thing we've got now, which was a 1,000,000 to 1 chance.
OK. You keep well, Anne. We'll have more on this. Thank you.
Mike's in Marden in Kent. Mike, what would you like to say?
Hi, how you doing? I just want to say that I think at the minute the consensus is, we're all confused, the government's giving us mixed signals, etc., etc. Personally, I've got a company, we sell hair transplants. I've had to furlough my staff. We can't send anyone to Turkey for their hair transplants for months and months and months. So we're not making a penny. I'm coming into work. I'm still having to do inquiries, do everything myself. I'm not grumbling. They've said we can go outside again. Keep 2 metres from each other. I don't get why people are so... if they're not going to open cafes, they're not going to let you indoors, they're not going to let you congregate in crowds, but this is the first step. Start using your cars to go places, OK? Start getting the petrol stations working again, the economy going again. Information's changing day by day. I think there's a consensus from the British people at the minute that they want definitive, we want this roadmap. You're not going to have a fixed roadmap because it's dynamic.
Well, I take your point. I take your point. It is contradicted by the experiences in pretty much every country that's dealt with things more successfully than us, though. Spain, for example, have had really... Well, you can keep saying different demographics. So what do you think the big differences are between Germany and the UK, Mike?
Probably between the amount of different people they've got in the country, ethnicities, ages, what...
And how does that impact on... And so why do you think our demographics mean we can't have a clearer roadmap and Germany's demographics mean they can? Or South Korea's, or Vietnam's, or Spain's?
So what you're saying is we should follow...
No, I'm just asking you questions, because I think... Because you're saying the government aren't doing that badly, they've got no choice but to do this. And I say, on what basis? And you say demographics. And I just say, what do you mean when you say that?
And this is the other thing as well. It's a very complicated situation. And government...
Well, clearly, just let me steer you back... If I may just steer you back to the point you've already made, on what basis do you conclude that the United Kingdom is uniquely ill-equipped to provide a clear roadmap out of this, while many other countries in the world have been able to do so.
Take your point, but that's Germany's approach. Okay,
Or Vietnam's, or Spain's, or South Korea's.
From my personal opinion, this is the situation. It's dynamic. Information's coming in. There's inconsistent information coming from different countries. Our government is trying to deal with it as best they can with the information they're getting, that they're privy to. We're not privy to it. We're sitting at the side of a football game.
So you look at...
Side of a football game, pointing fingers, saying, well, you should have done this, well, you should have done that.
No, we're not. We're counting corpses.
Yeah, but so is every country, and this is the thing.
And our numbers are higher.
With respect, who is Philip Schofield as an authority?
Well, who is Boris Johnson? Boris Johnson is a newspaper columnist. What makes him an authority?
Boris Johnson is an elected Prime Minister of our country.
Yes, but you're talking about his personal attributes and skills. He's just as qualified to teach us about coronavirus as... Well, I can tell you would, but this isn't really arguing. This isn't, Mike, this isn't really arguing. This is you saying stuff, repeating phrases you've heard, not really knowing, forgive me, what they mean. So if you want to have a crack, finally, at explaining what it is about, quotes, demographics, end quotes, that means we can't have clarity and leadership, then I'd love to hear it.
No, I take your point, and I do take your point.
It's not a point, Mike, it's a question. And Angela Merkel is a trained scientist. She's been explaining every single twist and turn of her government's policies to the German people. So it's not a point that I'm making, Mike, it's a question that I'm asking you. Someone's put the word demographics in your mind as an answer to the question of why are we doing so badly compared to some other countries, most other countries. And you've been given the answer, demographics. So I want to know what you understand by that. How can the German Chancellor tell her people exactly what is going on, but you think it's unreasonable to expect the British Prime Minister to do the same?
Okay, so there's a few things you're asking me there. So the first thing is this, demographics. So this affects ethnic minorities, black people, Indian people, I understand, a lot worse than it would affect Caucasian people, white people. Okay, so there's a difference between how many ethnic minorities they have, and that we.
Germany isn't full of white people. Germany isn't full of white people.
Age groups. How old is
just the question's not complicated. Yeah, the question's not complicated, is it?
It is. I'm trying to answer what you're saying. I'm trying to.
No, I know what the word demographics mean. I'm pointing out it's not an answer to any of the questions that I've asked you. And the people who are putting these ludicrous phrases and slogans in your mind as answers to complicated questions of life and death, they're not on your side, mate.
By this, no, but listen. I'm not coming out as some Tory voter. I'm saying...
I don't mind how you voted. You're defending the government, and I'm asking how come they're doing so badly compared to, for example, Germany? And your answer is demographics. I say, what do you mean by that? And with love and respect, Mike, it all falls apart a bit.
With love and respect to you, you're absolutely right, and I don't think that our government has made the absolute best decisions all the way along. The point I'm trying to make is...
They haven't done anything right.
I beg your pardon, sorry?
They haven't done anything right. He went on holiday for half of February. Is that because of demographics?
Obviously isn't, is it?
So what do you think it's because of?
Why he went on holiday?
If you were in charge of this, would you have gone on holiday for half of February?
Absolutely not. I'm not defending Boris Johnson.
Well,
I'm not
you kind of are.
Tory. I'm not. What I'm trying to say to you is this. As a nation, surely we should take this information they're giving us, because it's the only information... Listen, they're the ones in charge with...
But the information doesn't make sense, Mike. You can hire your mother-in-law as your cleaner and she's allowed into the house, but if she's not your cleaner, she's not. You can go out and meet one person and then the foreign secretary pops up on the radio and says, actually, you can go out and meet two. That's not information. Information is knowledge. It's not an opinion that then gets contradicted 12 hours later. It just isn't. And the answer to none of the questions that I've asked is demographics. Take care, though. I mean, we're all feeling the strain, we're all feeling the pain, and in some ways I wish I could have faith in these people, but I've been watching them very closely for a very, very long time, and I know exactly what they are. Let's go to Adrienne, who's in Forest Hill. Adrienne, what would you like to say? How does this happen? Why does it work?
Well, I'm just phoning in regards to why the teachers should go back to work, I guess.
Yes.
The reason I say this is because they are a public service, like firemen, nurses. So therefore, you know, they have to give the public the service. So nurses have gone back to work, regardless of not having the correct PPE. They've still had to go back to work, and they've complained, but they've still had to maintain a service.
So you're arguing essentially that two wrongs would make a right in this case?
I guess I am, in a way. I think that...
Yeah. Well, at least you're honest.
I think that what I'm saying...
So you know what you need to do now. You need to explain to the teachers listening why they should trust their safety and the safety of all our children to the same politicians that presided over the carnage in the care homes.
No, I get what you're saying, but we've all taken risks. We're all taking risks.
No, but you need to explain to them why they should trust these politicians.
Because as a public servant, they are the ones that you do trust to tell you what's going on. Because I work in the hospital, and we have what PPE we should wear. So I trust that they're taking care of me by giving me the PPE that they say is necessary to do the work that I do.
Yes, but lots and lots of doctors and nurses aren't getting the PPE that they want. So your happy experience doesn't negate theirs. It's completely independent of theirs. So I am going to labour the point slightly that they are saying we want to go back to work as long as we feel safe. I'm not trusting these people to tell me that I'm safe because they've just presided over carnage in our care homes and, of course, also presided over an appalling lack of PPE for much, but not all, of the NHS. So really it's a question of trust. Why should they trust these politicians? Boris Johnson misled the House on Wednesday about the situation in care homes, and now you're saying teachers should believe him when he tells them they'll be okay. I just want to know what you're seeing that they're missing.
Who else should they trust? If you're saying that the country has to get back into some
But that's a recipe for I mean, who else should they trust? So you're not allowed to not trust the Prime Minister.
I can't do it with you.
Well, I mean, we've already established that you're arguing two wrongs make a right, so I'm happy to be quiet and let you carry on.
Yeah, I just think that if by them going back to work creates another virus, so to speak, we are ready for that.
It'd be a second spike. I'm sorry to interrupt, but at the moment there's no fear of another virus, is there?
Definitely interrupting. Well, we don't know because they say it mutates, so therefore something may come back. But we are equipped for that now because we did build in the Excel hospital that could cater for so many people. So that's good. We're ready for that. So sometimes the risk has to be taken, and let's see what can be done. Remember, children are still at school. What data have they got for that? Have we had a lot of deaths because the children that are at school, admittedly in small units, but what is the data for that? We have to take
Well, you need to know that before you can form the opinion that you've already formed.
Then nothing will ever go back to normal. At one stage, we were saying that going on the computer is bad for children. Now, all they do is go on the computer. So at one stage, we say that taking education away from children just for 2 days before a holiday is bad for their education, and now we're taking it away completely.
No, they're still getting taught.
Well, I know
most of them are still. I mean, every teacher that's rung in is still working.
Exactly, people are still working, but in order to get it back to normal, we want normality. Children need to be socialising. They need to be.
Yes,
together. I have a daughter.
A pandemic isn't normality, is it? I mean, I do want you to have one more go at just telling them why they should trust these politicians, because we can't leave it at because they're the only politicians we've got, can we? Because then that's like a carte blanche for them to do what. Go on.
It's going round and round. We're just going round like a hamster in a wheel, because who are we trusting? We trust ourselves. I trust that I live in the world with nicer people that have my interests at heart, more than people that want to do me harm. So if I have voted, remember I have a vote, I voted for these people, and if they've got things wrong, sometimes I don't, it's acceptable in some ways, because we're dealing with something new. So
one more go, and I'm sorry for not being clear enough, but the thing I really want you to do is talk to a teacher who wants to go back to school, is already working, is being demonised in the media, and just simply doesn't trust this government, these politicians, because they've handled it catastrophically so far. Why should that teacher trust these politicians today? Just in a couple of sentences, tell them what they're missing.
I can't. All I'm going to say is, whoever you voted...
Go on, please, have a go. Please have a go, because it's the whole point of today's programme.
Had we voted in Labour, would we be getting a better service? Who knows?
And I mean, you know, come come on the Rovers, but let's talk about things that are actually vaguely relevant.
I think
Adrian, what are you going to say to the teacher who doesn't trust these people because of what they've done over the last 2 months?
I said it, James. They have to dig inside of themselves. Who did they vote for? If you voted for something, you must have done your background. You know what they're about. You know what they.
So if you voted for Boris Johnson, you must have known he'd go on holiday at the outbreak of a pandemic.
Yes, basically. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got there in the end, Adrian, and I think we can both agree on that. Oh dear, 29 minutes after 12. So 2 wrongs do make a right, and if you voted for Boris Johnson, then frankly you should have known he'd go on holiday at the outbreak of a pandemic and mislead the House of Commons about the state of care homes. The question, of course, is if you knew that he was the kind of person to go on holiday at the beginning of a pandemic and to mislead the House about the carnage in our care homes, then why the hell would you have voted for him? But that perhaps is too complicated a question for our purposes this afternoon.
If you're struggling with COVID-19 and you think you've got a problem with your eyesight, what is the government advice?
Well, I think that different people will take different steps in order to make sure that their eyesight is properly addressed.
What's the government advice?
Well, we advise people, obviously, to seek medical advice.
So it's not to get in a car and drive half an hour with your 4-year-old strapped in the back?
Well, as we know, Dominic, and I know you're alluding to Dominic, was given the all clear by the medics. He was told that it was safe for him to return to work. He wanted to make sure before he did return to work that he was in good condition in order to be able to drive the long journey back down the A1. So he took a short journey. That short journey was one that was consistent with the medical advice, consistent with the medical guidance. When he arrived at just outside Barnard Castle, he went for a very short walk.
No, sorry, Mr. Gove. We don't need to go into all of that detail because we heard him yesterday. So are you telling me that doctors told him to take that drive? He was following medical advice?
I'm saying that doctors cleared him to be able to return to work, and he was able to return to work.
But you said that we should take medical advice. That's how you started when I said, what should we do if you think that you've got a problem with your eyesight?
And he did take medical advice and was told that he could return to work, and indeed he could drive safely as well.
Would you go on a 60-mile round trip to test your eyesight?
I have, on occasions in the past, driven with my wife in order to make sure that what's the right way of putting it?
I'm staggered. I don't know how you're going to get out of this one, but it's going to be fun.
No. I think people who know me would know that I'm not an authority on driving, and that I'm not the best person in the world to ask detailed questions about driving.
No, I merely asked you if you've ever been on a 60-mile round trip to test your eyesight, and you said you had. I mean, why not go to Specsavers?
Well, I've subsequently got in. No, the point that I was seeking to make is that I'm not an authority on driving. As someone who took 7 attempts to pass their driving test.
We've heard from the Bishop of Leeds. He tweeted on Sunday saying the question now is, do we accept being lied to, patronised and treated by a PM as mugs? The moral question is not for Cummings. It is for the Prime Minister and ministers, yourself, MPs who find this behaviour acceptable. What are we to teach our children? I ask as a responsible father.
Well, I wish the Bishop well.
Is that all you want to say to him?
I wish him well.
Goodness, are you sure that's all you want to say to him?
Yes, you know, I'm a Christian too, and I think therefore I have great respect for the Church, for bishops, for the leadership that they exercise. I wish them well.
The problem is you've rushed it forward, haven't you? Because you want to take the headlines away from Dominic Cummings. So you brought it forward. It should have been 1st of June when the app is being launched at the same time. Then with the app, what you could have done is if people go out, they have to have a GPS on their phone, and they get a call or whatever, a text every 6 or 7 hours like they do in Singapore. But you've had to rush it forward.
It's priceless, Kay. I'm normally accused of delaying these things and bringing them in too slowly. I committed to getting the system in mid-May.
You did. No. You talked about the app in mid-May. Okay. You talked about the app in mid-May, didn't you, Health Secretary? And we've still not got that app. You said the app was absolutely essential to this track and trace. The app is still not ready until next week at the earliest, maybe after that, and yet you've brought this forward. I suppose many of my viewers will think it's not a laughing matter.
Yes, well, I can't quite work out whether you're telling me that I've gone too slow or too fast. I think we've gone at just.
I tell you what, I don't think my viewers know. I think they're as confused as I am. Clarify it for us.
Yeah. Well, we brought it in at just the right speed, and the crucial thing with the app is helpful. It's working on the Isle of Wight, but there's a reason that we haven't brought it in right at the start, which is that asking people to isolate, even if they're healthy, because the NHS has got in contact and informed them that they're at higher risk because they've been in contact with somebody who's tested positive. That is quite a big change.
Let's have... this is a very tough screen to operate. Crew, Adam.
Hello, Nick.
Adam.
What it is, Nick, I don't really have anything to say.
Oh, well, I certainly am glad that you called.
Well, no, about the coronavirus. I just like to talk about the violence that we're seeing, and not just in America, but across the world.
Violence?
Well, obviously with recent events in America, but for me, it seems to me that all forms of violence, including simulated violence, should be forbidden.
Simulated?
Yes, even simulated violence.
What does that mean?
Such as computer games. It seems to we just live in a culture where we're saturated with violent imagery.
Yeah, well, that's not exactly a new phenomenon, is it?
Well, it's... I mean, violent computer games have only become popular within the last few decades.
Yeah, but before that there were war comics and war films, and kids used to play cowboys and Indians, and, when they weren't playing doctors and nurses.
Disgusting.
But that's another issue entirely.
Yeah, but I think if you look back at some of the older culture, there always seems to be a moral message in it, and I find that's lacking now. I mean, most computer games don't have any moral message, do they?
I've got no idea. I don't play computer games. Do you?
Well, not anymore, no, because they're too violent for me. But and it seems to me that violence has become accepted and normalised.
Well, how do you think that human beings became number one on this planet? By being nice? we became number one by killing anything else that gets in our way.
Well, we are a very aggressive species. I do agree with that.
The most aggressive on Earth.
Yes.
Bar none.
Yes, but we could learn a lot. But not all humans are aggressive. Take, for instance, the Buddha. He wasn't aggressive, and a lot of the Eastern thought, such as Jainism and Hinduism, ahimsa is one of the core values of these religions. And in this country...
Please, religion has been responsible for more death and destruction than anything on Earth, bar possibly possession. Possessions.
Yes, I think perhaps you're referring to Abrahamic religion.
No, I'm not. Just religion.
Oh, right. But so you...
I mean, is there anything that has been responsible for more deaths on Earth than religion, bar possessions and land? Well, the two are the same. Possessions and land. I class them as the same. Hundreds of millions of people have died because one tribe believes in one particular invisible space wizard and another tribe believes in a different one.
Well, Buddhists don't. You're not required to believe in God if you're a Buddhist.
Right. Well, I'm certainly not going to have a conversation about who believes in what, depending on what religion they adhere to. That's not why you called, is it? To have a conversation about religion?
No.
Because I'm not remotely interested.
No, I just wanted to address the level of violence in society, and I think it's noticeably increased over the past 20 years or so.
And are you putting that down to video games?
Not just computer games, but I think it's coincided with our culture being systematically dumbed down. Because if you look at television schedules from about 30 years ago, the BBC, for example, you'll see that the Open University was being broadcast, and there was still an
Nobody was watching it. 0 people watched the Open University. That weren't actually. Yeah, I don't doubt it. That weren't actually taking a course because it was boring. People were watching. Oh God, I don't know, Dick Emery and Wheel Tappers and Shunters Social Club and all of that stuff, and they were getting a steady diet of racism and homophobia and misogyny and all of the rest of that stuff.
Well, I think a lot of commentators tend to focus on those very dated programmes, but they neglect to mention programmes such as I, Claudius and all the natural history
Well, we still got those. We've still got the TV's up to its eyeballs in whales and penguins.
Yes. It is, yes, but at the same time, it's become sort of marginalised to an extent on BBC4.
Nonsense. David Attenborough is always on the telly. He's on the BBC and he's on Sky and he's here, there and everywhere, baby.
Well, and then what about foreign language films as well? You don't see them on Channel 4 anymore, or
Rubbish.
BBC2.
Of course you do. They're always on the TV, foreign language films. I'm forever taping them, but never in the mood to actually watch them. Because, you know, if I want to read, I'll buy a book.
Yeah. But whenever I put film 4 on, it's always gratuitous violence and sex. And
Why do people always twin violence and sex? What has the one got to do with the other?
Well,
you know, apart from in specific circumstances.
They're both two of the lowest appetites of human nature.
No, well, you say lowest, but without sex, you wouldn't be here. But maybe that's a good reason to ban sex. I've got to go, but thanks a lot, Adam, for whatever that was.
Rallying to defend their founder. Scouts stand guard by the statue of Lord Robert Baden-Powell. One veteran scout expressing anger at plans to remove the statue and promising more than verbal opposition to those who try.
Give them a bunch of fivers. Anybody who touches it.
You feel that strongly about it?
I do, yes, because it's taking it away from everybody.
Don't take it down. We don't want it down. Put something up around it.
Early this morning, local residents had gathered protectively around the statue on Poole Quayside to prevent its removal. The council leader says the decision to move it had been taken reluctantly because it was on a protesters' target list.
If that gets, torn up and thrown in that water, that is something which we'll be responsible for. And if we knew it was a possibility and we took no action, we would have been criticised, as Bristol were criticised, for knowing what was going on with that and doing nothing.
Baden-Powell founded what would become the world's largest youth movement in 1907.
We're going about the world to these different countries to try and induce them to take up that spirit of brotherhood.
But it is his alleged sympathy for Hitler's Nazi movement that has brought him into the current debate. These scouts had travelled from South Wales to defend his record.
He wasn't a Nazi sympathiser by any stretch. In his diary, he admitted he read Mein Kampf and agreed that some of the ideas in there, like health and education, were good, but that's as far as it went.
It's an issue stirring some strong emotions.
Baden-Powell was simply doing nothing more than promoting friendship and peace amongst young people all over the world, and that should be well respected, and he should stay right there.
I'm a bit quite upset actually by Mr. SATIRICAL.
Okay.
Describing anybody that was going to...
I'm sorry you couldn't get on in the time that he was here.
Yeah, that's quite right, because they're not. Maybe some of them probably are, but the majority will be veterans who have served this country, like myself.
But you're not coming to London for a fight. You're not coming to London for a fight tomorrow, are you?
Sorry?
You're not coming to London with the express intention of having a fight tomorrow, are you?
We wasn't going to London for a fight at all. We was going to London.
No, exactly. So he's talking about people who are seeking or looking to foment violence, and I did pick him up 3 times.
looking after them
No,
statues.
you see, he wasn't. This is. I can't speak for him. That's not what I heard.
Well, that's what I heard. That's what everybody else heard.
Well, it can't be, because 3 times I said to him, you can't describe everyone who is concerned about statues as extreme far right. I said that to him three times. Do you think was 3 times not enough, Andy? Do you think?
I'm very sorry, but I missed that bit. I just caught the end of it when he was.
Well, you missed all 3 bits of it.
Yeah, I just.
So where did you get this? Where did you get this information from then? If you weren't listening to the phone, and I don't want to sound chippy. I'm just genuinely curious.
Right. Of tweets that he's put out about the far right coming to London Saturday.
But I asked him specifically about this 3 times. So where did you get the information about what he said to me today when he said the polar opposite, Andy?
Okay, I didn't turn the radio on towards the end of his bit with you, and his last words were the far right. Look, and the statues.
Yeah, anybody contemplating violence. Anybody contemplating violence this weekend? On both, if you want to talk about sides.
The veterans were coming not for violence.
But then he wasn't describing them as. Well, I hate this, mate, because I think we're probably in a similar place. You've been persuaded that he's described veterans as far-right extremists. I can only promise you that he hasn't, but I appreciate your social media is probably full of people insisting that he has. If you're coming to London with no intention whatsoever of hurting anybody else, or indeed of damaging any inanimate objects, then there's no way anybody would describe anybody like that as an extremist, any more than all the peaceful protesters marching up around London are all anarchists.
If you stop someone from damaging it...
But you don't need to, because they've all been boarded up. Did you miss that bit as well?
Yeah, no, I've seen that bit. I've seen them all being boarded up.
So they've all been boarded up and they're all protected, and the Mayor's argument was there's really no need to come to London to protect them from theory. Yes,
that.
Good.
I was.
Right. So we're all agreed then? But,
no, what we don't agree with is his description of anyone that doesn't support this left-wing anarchist movement that is white people, not black people.
But you see, when you say left-wing anarchist movement, you're doing what you accused him of, is that you're lumping everybody under the extremist label.
I don't know how to describe the people that did attack the statues and that, but I know...
Criminals works.
I bet your life they weren't black.
Sorry?
The majority would be white, middle class, who don't want this government, who don't want Donald Trump or this, that and the other. And it's all being hijacked politically to promote racial divide, and I don't like it.
Okay. I mean, you remember how it all started?
Yep. Yes, I remember how it all started. The guy was killed in America.
Yeah, can you remember his name?
It's absolutely disgusting. I've watched the whole 9 minutes of that video, and I thought that was absolutely appalling.
But somehow 2 weeks later, you're having a crack at white middle-class people who are trying to foment racial division.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's
I'm here to help. Keep listening. Right. I know you missed this morning's programme, but I am here to help. There are violent minorities within any crowd, and just as you would not come to London looking to have a fight, and therefore you don't deserve to be described as a far-right extremist, so the massive majority of people who protest in support of the idea that Black Lives Matter had no intention to commit any violence and didn't commit any violence. So to describe them all as left-wing anarchists or whatever phrase you prefer today is just as ridiculous as describing anybody who doesn't want to see a statue of Winston Churchill damaged as a far-right extremist. Is that helpful?
That is what's being done.
Okay.
By the media, a lot of it.
But so do you think the media is part of the left-wing conspiracy?
Well, there's liberal left. Well, I don't know what you want to call it, but
well, I don't care what I call it. I need to know roughly what you're talking about first. So should we go through the newspapers?
I find it very hard to understand how anybody that doesn't wish the cenotaph or Winston Churchill to be damaged.
Yes, I don't wish the cenotaph or Winston Churchill.
And stop people doing it.
But they don't need to.
They'll be described as a far right thug.
Well, it depends what you do to stop them.
Well, you do whatever you have to do.
What, would you stab them?
Don't be silly.
Well, do you see what I mean? Would you punch them?
If they punch me, yes.
No, they're not punching you. They're only interested in the statue. Would you punch them?
If I had to stop them damaging it, yeah.
Okay, well, I wouldn't. I don't want to see the statue damaged, so I guess the distinction, far-right extremist, is obviously unfair, but someone who's prepared to hit a person in order to protect a statue, what word should we use?
I'm an ex-squaddy, I'm an ex-soldier.
And I'm so grateful for your service, but what word would we use to describe it?
I need to protect.
Yes, I get that. But what word do we use to describe me? I don't want Winston Churchill's statue to be damaged any more than I want Nelson Mandela or Gandhi's statue to be damaged. But I don't want anyone to get hit. I don't want anyone to get hit.
I describe you as a very liberal person with a
What does that mean?
A very good heart.
What does liberal mean?
Slightly misguided in the ways of the world.
Well, thank you for the guidance. But what does liberal mean?
Liberal, it means a liberal attitude.
Yeah, no. What does it mean?
Everyone can be reasoned with.
And you think that's bad? That makes me naive.
No, I don't think it's bad. But it's
because I'm reasoning with you now.
Yeah, me and you are quite happy now.
So are you a liberal?
And I said, if I say, all right, please don't.
So are you a liberal? Because you're reasoning with me now. Does that make you a liberal?
No, because I am liberal. I want everyone to get on.
Same here.
I hate violence. I've seen what real violence is.
Yes, I know, and I haven't. I want to make that absolutely clear. I haven't seen any of the things that you've seen. But if I was confused by one thing, it would be the idea that you'd endanger your own safety to protect a statue. You know, we could, if we were being a bit tabloidy, mate, we could say a lump of stone. Why would you hurt another human?
And how many thousands of people have given their life for a flag?
But they haven't given their lives for a flag, Andy. They've given their lives to. Andy, they've given their lives to protect other lives.
To protect their friends' lives, their mates standing beside them.
Exactly.
Following a flag.
Exactly. Well, they're not for the flag, though. It's people. People matter. Flags don't matter. Ultimately, statues don't matter. You matter, mate. Flesh and blood matters. Humanity matters. Flags and statues are helpful emblems and symbols, but
to believe that this country matters.
Well, everybody is brought up.
Well, we were certainly brought up differently, I know that. You know, we were born exactly the same, Irish mother, put up for adoption.
So what do you think the defining differences are, then, in the way that we look at the world? What is it you think that I've got wrong when you say that I'm misguided?
I was trying to...
That's okay.
There are some people you cannot reason with.
Right.
Some people only... There is no reasoning with them.
Yes, but I agree with you. Still try,
so then what do you do, James? What do you do?
Well, you still try to
reason. You use violence to protect your house.
Would I use violence to protect my house?
Someone's trying to break into your house and you...
Well, no, it depends whether my family... I don't know. I don't know, Andy. I'm more interested in what you think...
Believing
go on.
Country.
Yeah, but we're jumping around a lot now. Would I attack a burglar? And then, I don't want to sound like I'm insulting you, but that's the idea of what I would do if my house was being burgled. Where does patriotism come into that, mate?
Patriotism comes into it with regarding certain monuments in this country.
Right.
Winston Churchill.
Does it really? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see them damaged either, so I'm trying to pin down what you think the difference is between you and me.
You don't want to see it damaged, and you keep asking the person not to do it.
No, but it's been boarded up. It's been boarded up, Andy. The problem has been... The boil has been lanced, as it were. The problem has been...
You asked me, would I
yes,
find
go on.
someone to stop them damaging it?
Yeah.
I said yes.
Yes, I know you did.
I'll ask you the same question. You don't want it damaged, but they're intent in damaging it. What would you do?
I'm not going to get myself locked up because of some scrote that wants to damage the cenotaph. I just think that would be stupid.
So you'd let him damage it?
Would I let him down? I wouldn't punch somebody who was going to damage a statue. But I would certainly take a photograph and give it to the police and make sure and do everything I could to make sure that they were brought to proper justice. Because, that's what people who love their country believe in, isn't it? Law and order.
Very easy.
So here's the question, Andy. Here's the question you asked me. Would I break the law to protect a statue? No, I wouldn't, Andy.
Well, there's people are different, James.
Well, I know they are. And I guess all we ever really argued about during this phone call was what words we should use to describe those people and those differences.
Please don't describe veterans as far right, because we're
Nobody has, Andy. You didn't hear the phone in, mate. You've got that off Twitter.
No, I didn't hear all the phone in, but I just heard his last.
He didn't do that,
words
Andy.
About
3 times, mate. Let's not go back in this circle, Andy. Come on, we respect each other more than that. 3 times I made precisely the point.
Coming to London.
Yes.
Right, we're implying to stand around the statue, so...
He mentioned Yaxley Lennon. He's no veteran. He's no veteran. The fellow who used to run UKIP, they're no veterans.
So
the Football Hooligan Alliance, or whatever they call themselves, they're not veterans.
Yeah, what I do know about the Football Hooligan Alliance, because I did go on one of the demonstrations that wasn't covered in the media, about 40,000 people there, and veterans were speaking there.
I still don't know what we disagree about. I still don't... We covered all of that. We did cover that. But what do we disagree about, Andy? I'd really like to hear it in your words. I'd love to know what you think we disagree about.
I'll tell you what we disagree about.
Please.
How life is lived. The realities of life for an ordinary working class person, being black, white, brown, green, blue, whatever
So
colour
go on.
you like.
What's the area of disagreement?
The area of disagreement is attitude.
Yeah, go on.
All right. You don't understand how angry people can be.
Oh, I do.
Well, all right, you might do. You yourself would never commit a violent act.
That's not true.
Well, under certain circumstances. I've heard you admit yourself on radio. You think you've only ever had one punch-up in your life.
You make it sound like I should be embarrassed. So,
13 and 21.
Andy, you remember the question was, what do you think we disagree about? And you're telling me, and I know you don't mean to do this, and the radio can be quite
I'm not...
You don't really think that we're on the opposite sides of arguments because you're more comfortable with physical violence than I am?
No, I don't know how to explain that. I'm not educated like you, and I'm not eloquent.
But you're doing a bang-up job, mate. I just want to know what you think we disagree about. In your own mind and in whatever words you please. Why in your mind have you got me sort of in this... You've got me in this box called liberal, and yet within 2 questions about what that word means, you're describing yourself as a liberal.
No, I'll tell you... Well...
Yeah, go on.
I would deport every illegal immigrant.
Okay.
You would...
Well, Boris Johnson was in favour of giving them all an amnesty, so I'm now on the same team as Boris Johnson, am I?
Yeah. See, that's what I'm trying to get. Everybody has a different opinion.
Yes.
But if we don't have the same opinions or borderline the same as...
Go on.
Not you, maybe all people like you, then you're described as a far-right person. I've voted Labour for most of my life.
I don't know that I'm getting as much help as you could be giving me on the question of what... I mean, you started off talking about the importance of defending the cenotaph, and you ended up talking about illegal immigrants.
Well, just because, James, as I said, I'm not as intelligent as you, as well educated as you.
I don't know that. You're not as well educated as me, but you're probably just as intelligent as me.
Well, I never had the same chances as you, if you like. Whatever.
I completely agree.
You have, James.
Yes.
And I haven't got the capability to use language like you do.
Well, we don't need to be getting all sesquipedalian about it, or whatever word Boris Johnson might use. You can use whatever words you want to just describe in your own mind why you think you and me are on opposite sides of some sort of battlefield.
Because, right, I'll be... Me, and there's thousands of people just like me...
Let's just keep it to you. Let's keep it between you and me. Let's just keep it between us. Why do you think I'm on the opposite side of a battlefield to you?
Right. I was going to go to the Cenotaph or Winston Churchill statue, wherever we was needed.
Yes.
And make sure nobody damaged it.
Yes.
And all the nice middle-class white kids, students, whatever they are, that are screaming in my face, blah, 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 this, that and the other. But if they want it, they can have it. End of story.
I know that. We've established that. We've established that. I just want to know what you think makes you and me enemies or opponents.
Because you, in your own way, give support to them.
Okay, let me run this by you. It would be if the statues hadn't been boarded up and people sought to deface or damage them, they should be prosecuted for criminal damage. Okay, so we're clearly on the same side of that issue. We disagree about whether or not it's worth getting banged up for punching a hoodlum. So I want to get to this, mate. I really do. I think it would be good for both of us. Why do you think we're on different teams?
Well, because, I listen to you every day, and I just want to throw the radio out the window half the time.
That's okay, but it doesn't answer my question. Why do you think you and me are on different teams?
You're very good at making someone that doesn't agree with you look like an idiot, and that's why I'm frightened of coming across as.
Well, I don't think you will. You don't. No, but I hate it. No, I know you're not, which is why I'm confident that you can put into words what it is that you think makes me somehow your opponent or your enemy.
I think British history is very important.
So do I.
And regardless of what some people have done, if they've done it for this country, slavery's abhorrent. It's just the worst thing that ever invented.
Please don't say but. Don't say but now, Andy.
Slavery's abhorrent.
Yes.
But this country made a lot of money out of it.
There it is.
This country is what it is now because of what it did in the past.
So, yes, carry on, sorry.
All right, so rightly or wrongly, we've done terrible things in the past, but it's done good things as well. I can't name them, James. But
I'm not going to ask you to, but I agree with you. I don't agree with you about necessarily, and I'm going to have to go to the news, but would I be right in thinking that the fundamental division between us, even though you've just said this country has done terrible things in the past, you see yourself as someone who fights against criticism of anything this country has ever done?
Yeah.
Okay, even though you just said that the country's done terrible things in the past?
It's done terrible, but it's made it what it is now.
Yeah. Which is a place where we can all be free and have conversations like this, and should we so decide, we can take down statues of slavers.
Well, yeah, I've got no problems with taking down some statues.
All right, mate. But you would risk being jailed for stopping someone spray painting one.
For the cenotaph, Winston Churchill, things that mean something to.
Well, let's part with a shared sense of gratitude that they've all been boarded up to prevent the kind of vandalism that we would both be very, very unhappy to see, Andy. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right.
Please don't think that everybody's far right, that we're going to protect them.
No, don't do that. We've just literally spent nearly 25, 30 minutes explaining why you have been misled into that position by social media rhetoric and lies. You know, and I don't think
to be honest,
any of the things that...
I use a lot.
Well, mate, I've done my bit now, Andy, and I hope you appreciate you've had a much bigger crack of the whip than callers usually get. I've enjoyed talking to you, and I'm glad you listen every day, and I hope you might listen a bit differently moving forward, just a bit differently, because I'm not your enemy, mate, and when you talk about advantage and luck and chances in life, everything I stand for politically is about redistributing from those who've got the very, very most down through to those who've got the very, very least. And we can never, ever, ever pull that off, mate, if we're wearing our scarves so tightly around our necks that it cuts off the flow of blood to our brains. But have a great weekend.
Hello, good evening. Protesters, including far-right activists, have clashed with police in central London. Officers were punched, kicked and targeted with bottles by shaven-headed demonstrators who said they turned out to protect statues in Parliament Square. The Prime Minister condemned the violence, saying racist thuggery has no place on our streets, and anyone attacking the police would be met with the full force of the law. Thousands of others on both sides of what's become a cultural debate about race and society made their points peacefully. Jason Farrell reports.
The violence erupted early afternoon in Trafalgar Square. And in Westminster. Far-right activists had hijacked a protest to protect statues, including that of Winston Churchill.
I just wanted to speak about the march and that tomorrow from the
like the football hooligan side of it, like they're saying, they're all thugs and all this. But I mean, I'll put it clear, I think they're just sick of what's going on here. Everyone has jumped on this thing that's been in America, and like the statues and all that, what they've done, it's gone a bit too far in a lot of people's eyes around London anyway.
Yes.
I think tomorrow, if they have cancelled the march, I think it's for the best, because I do think there possibly is going to be a bit of trouble up there if they did start trying to attack more statues.
Well, I've seen some tweets this morning from people who are clearly hoping for trouble and violence. How does someone like me tell the difference between somebody who really wants violence and somebody who, perhaps like Andy, I don't know if you heard that call, is more than happy to mete it out, but probably would rather, I don't know whether he would rather not or not, but how do we tell the difference between the people who are up for a fight and the people who are acting out of purity and principle, Lee?
Well, I think the majority of working class people around London anyway, just normal builders, not always builders and that, but just normal people that have had it a bit hard in their life and just looking at what's going on here. And they've got to the point, it's becoming a bit of a joke. Well, not everyone is racist at all. No. I've got black friends. But some of these people that have done this stuff up there, to the police as well, attacking them. I've seen videos.
Andy thought it was mostly middle-class white kids that would have been responsible for the vandalism and the violence.
Yeah, all right. We'll talk about that. All right. Yeah, I agree with some of that.
But here we are talking about race again.
In a way, I am, because this is what a lot of it's going to. I was looking at a video on Twitter, I think it might have been yesterday. And there was some black kids that have been arrested.
Be careful. They've been arrested, so we can't talk about that. It's a live criminal case.
But that's what I'm still saying, though. It's still like...
No, and I'm saying don't talk about that because it's a live criminal case. And you know, particularly from some of the constituencies that you describe, you know what happens when people disrupt criminal proceedings. You can end up in prison. So the question really... I mean, can I ask you a question? You promise not to get cross with me? What is it that you fear when you describe things going too far? What are you worried about?
It's putting a bigger divide where
between who?
White people, race.
No, but we've just established that most people on these marches are white, or at least loads of them are.
But they're not all white, are they? Come on. It's not.
No, but nor are your friends. Your friends aren't all white either, you said.
No, I've got some, but tomorrow it's going to be majority white people that's up there. On the march, on the football.
So what is it you're worried about? What are you fearful of?
I'm not worried about anything. I just think it's going to...
So when you say it could go, it's going too far, or it will get out of hand, what will?
Well, it's going to be trouble, isn't there, between black and white people? It's what's coming.
Well, no, there's going to be trouble between... It's not going to be divided by race, is it, as we've just established, any more than your friendship group is. It's going to be divided by something else, which I tried to get to with Andy, but with you, I'm more interested in you now. What are you cross about? What are you worried about?
I'm not worried about anything. I'm cross about all these statues and that are going to get took down. It's just I think.
But they're not. They've been protected.
No, but the ones that the guys at like hospital and stuff that they're taking down. It's just it's been there for years.
It has been there for years, and we sent children up chimneys for years. But you wouldn't want to go back to that, would you?
No, not really. But I mean, it is just going. This is my opinion. It's going a bit too far, and I just think tomorrow.
No, I know you keep saying it's going a bit too far, and I keep saying what is.
Well, this Black Lives Matters.
It's going too far.
There's white people. But there's white people that have everyone's life matters. It ain't just black people, is it?
Well, that's what the movement is designed to achieve. It's to say Black Lives Matter as well. So stop killing us.
Yeah, who's saying it doesn't.
Well, the policing record in America makes it absolutely clear.
But I mean, we're not America. We're in.
No, but we're talking about where this started with George Floyd, and the records here. The records here also show. You see, now you and me are shouting at each other or talking over each other. I'm not. You think that when you say it, you mean we're spending too much time worrying about black people.
At the moment, yeah. So everything's been forgotten about coronavirus. Yeah.
Yeah, but what were you planning on doing tomorrow? Looking into coronavirus and doing a bit of social distancing advice, or marching up to London for a fight?
marching up to London tomorrow, definitely, because...
You see, but there it is, you see, in the same breath, claiming that coronavirus is what we should all be talking about, but you're...
It's all been broken now, isn't it? Everyone's not social distance. There ain't no more.
I am. Yeah.
But not everyone is.
No, that's the problem, Lee. You don't make it better by joining in with the people doing things wrong.
No, I agree with that as well. But then at the same time...
But what are you going to be doing tomorrow?
Stopping anyone attacking any statues.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
How would you explain to your child why there was a statue in your town of celebrating a man who treated your people like animals?
I would just say it's part of history. That's what I would say. It ain't right, but it's history.
But so why can't we take the statue down then if it's not right?
Because it was up there for a reason. It's been put up as a symbol,
children were up chimneys for a reason, but we managed to get rid of that, didn't we? So what is it about slavery? Why is slavery somehow not as bad as putting children up chimneys?
I'm not saying slavery is not bad. It is bad.
So why can't we take the statue down?
It's part of London that's been up there for years. I'm talking about the ones in London anyway, so...
Right. So because it's been there for ages, we have to leave it up there. And then how does anything ever change?
There is people, James, that don't want them to come down.
No, well, you're one of them.
I know. I'm not saying I'm not.
No, I'm just intrigued by what criteria you use for deciding.
And that last week, I think's wrong.
All right, Lee. I wish you well. Try to stay out of trouble, mate, and do bear in mind that if you are mixing with large numbers of people, then whoever you go home to will also be at risk.
We are awful, terrible, backward, knuckle-dragging, racist people, and we should be deeply ashamed.
Steve and I grew up in southeast London, and although he's infinitely better looking, he's a couple of years older. I remember when the National Front marched through the streets virtually at the end of where I live. That would never happen now. When I was first elected onto London Assembly, I sat next to an elected member of the British National Party, an explicitly racist political party, elected into London government by the voters of London. That would never happen now. When I was at school, I had no idea who Mary Seacole was, and my mum was a black nurse. My parents started going out when being a mixed-race couple would get you spat at in the street. That would never happen now.
Good evening. The Home Secretary has condemned as unacceptable thuggery the actions of demonstrators after angry clashes with police in central London. Hundreds of men converged in Parliament Square after far-right groups, including Britain First, called on supporters to protect monuments such as the Cenotaph and Sir Winston Churchill's statue.
An air of menace hung over central London today. Fears of violence borne out directly in front of the House of Commons. Many hundreds answered the call of far-right groups to confront anti-racism demonstrators. Instead, they vented their fury at lines of police.
And how to square this? Churchill, who defeated Hitler, being defended by men apparently making Nazi salutes.
Far-right extremism is the fastest growing terrorist threat in the UK. That's according to the country's most senior counter-terrorism officer. Metropolitan Police Assistant Commissioner Neil Basu said that 7 out of the 22 plots foiled since March last year were linked to far-right ideologies. And he warned that public speakers, including politicians, need to be very careful about their rhetoric.
That would never happen now. That would never happen now. That would never happen now. That would never happen now.
I mean, it's basically a question about the way you do your presentation. I mean, you're meant to ask, at least in my opinion, open questions to the audience, so the audience can ring in and give them your views. However, when I listen to you, rarely...
do you know what, mate? I think today hungry children are more important than your debut as a radio critic. So let's start with the question I'm asking. Who are our own, do you think, when we talk about helping our own first?
Down there. The audience of what I've just heard, I would believe that the majority of people that would want to ring into your station and actually say what they believe or think, rightly or wrongly, are afraid to ring in because you've already set them up. Anybody who...
Well, you tell me what you think, Pete, okay?
It's
Yes.
got to be demonised.
But my opinion is that we should help hungry children.
Yeah, but you don't put it in that context. You say,
Well, I just did, Pete.
Whoever,
just for you.
If you don't agree with me, you are in the wrong.
We should help hungry children. Tell me why you disagree with that.
I don't disagree. I didn't say I did disagree, but I disagree with
Pete,
the way
mate,
you set the audience.
there's a lot of people listening to the programme, and if you want to post a review of the programme, I'm happy to retweet it. But in the meantime, can you have a crack at the questions that I'm asking?
That they cannot ask you a straight question or voice their
Go on, then. Ask me a
opinion.
straight question.
Demonised by you.
Ask me a straight question,
they don't
Pete.
agree with your viewpoint.
Someone's feeling a bit ashamed today, aren't they, Pete?
Not me.
Yes, Pete.
I've got nothing to be ashamed about. I haven't.
Then why are you ringing up, complaining about how I've made you feel? Why have you rung up to complain about how I've made you feel, Pete?
You haven't made me feel anything.
So what are you complaining about?
It's frustrated that you push an agenda and don't.
Frustrated that I hold up the mirror, and there you are, looking in the mirror and seeing a man who doesn't want to help hungry children. So,
am I naive? You're far from naive. You're extremely manipulative.
You've been on for 4 minutes, Pete,
allow the audience
and you're still talking about me.
To ring in and disagree with you.
Well, go on then, Pete. Disagree.
You spent the last 4 to 5 minutes.
Pete, disagree. Disagree, Pete.
Well, great. Disagree with me. That's what conversation should be about. Not picking people up and not allowing them to say what they think.
I'm literally begging you to say what you think.
I think many things. I'm open-minded, but I don't think...
Yes, but on the specific issue that we're talking about today, Pete, what is it you want to say?
What? Should we let hungry children go hungry?
Should the government help hungry children in the summer holidays?
Yes, if they're in need.
Well, hunger is need, right?
Is that okay?
Yes, so what exactly is it you're complaining about again?
Your presentation.
Right. Even though you agree with me.
Sorry, this isn't your argument, is it?
Yes, it is. I desperately want the government to help hungry children.
The audience, for anybody who wanted to
But you agree with me.
An alternative viewpoint to yours.
But you don't have an alternative viewpoint, so how can you speak for people who do if you agree with me?
I beg your pardon?
How can you speak for people who have an alternative viewpoint if you don't, Pete? You just agreed with me.
But you've already... If anybody was to ring in and say that they didn't...
Well, do it then. Try it. Try it. Come on, Pete. Come on, Pete. Come on, Pete. Tell the truth.
What is the truth, James?
Well, the truth is you don't ring in to a radio presenter you agree with to complain. No, but it's yours, mate. You just said that the government should help.
If these children are seriously in need, yes. But...
And that judgment is made during term time.
I also think...
Yeah, go on.
A lot of it, as your caller who was from the school just recently said or inferred, that it isn't the children, it is the children that are hungry, but the reason the children are hungry is poor parenting in a lot of cases.
So should we don't feed the ones with poor don't feed the children with poor parents then? Is that what you're saying?
No, teach the parents
so who do we feed?
how to look after their own children.
How are we going to pay for that?
Well, there's no point just
and how do we feed the children while we're teaching the parents, Pete?
Listen, you should set up, or what it should be, social programs that actually teach parents. You can't have a society where people continually have children.
But we're talking, Nadine and Marcus Rashford, we're talking about people who will...
those children. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at the situation. It will continue to perpetuate itself if people have more and more children because they choose. I'm not saying everybody, but if some people
Pete, why are you talking about these people?
Rather than actually work,
there we go.
Spend their money not on their children, but on all the other stuff that they actually want. And
there we go, mate. You see, we got there in the end.
Stop.
Yes, we got there in the end, didn't we? You don't think the children of parents on benefits should get help with their food?
Well, that's
and you feel utterly ashamed of yourself, and that's why you rung in to complain about the question. Pete, I could hardly listen more. Pete,
push your agenda. And
what's my agenda, Pete?
What the audience thinks. You only like your own voice.
Well, I'm trying to listen to yours. Briefly, what's my agenda, Pete?
Well, what I said was, I said children that do require food should receive it. But it cannot be a perpetual situation. The parents of these children should learn to put the children first and look after their children, not themselves.
Yes, and what's my agenda?
We've created a situation, a society, where that's it. It's just basically you can choose to work or not to work. Now, don't tell me
and
that
this story is about people who do work and still can't afford to feed their children. No, Pete, she wasn't, mate.
What she said...
Pete, she wasn't.
Not that the children are hungry, but the reason
didn't say that, Pete.
Is because
she said I work in a school and still run out of money before the end of the month, Pete.
Yeah,
I don't know what call you were listening to. But before you go, Pete, genuinely, I get this, Pete, you're going to have to listen to me at some point. I get this quite a lot, and I'm fascinated to know what the word means. What is my agenda, mate?
You push an agenda all the time.
Yeah, what is it?
That's the reason why the majority of times I can't listen to you.
So what's my agenda, Pete?
Well, you're trying to draw me into this, and it's an extremely complicated situation.
You just literally said that I have an agenda. What is it?
Say,
Pete, please, it's 10:43. We've only got 2 minutes. What is my agenda?
Okay. You push a left-wing agenda.
What does that mean, Pete?
Open borders.
We're talking about school dinners, Pete. What's my agenda on school dinners?
Yeah, but you set the agenda when you started the conversation. You didn't...
What is it? What is my agenda, Pete?
Please call in and say what you thought. You set
What's my agenda?
Your audience.
Pete, mate, please. What's my agenda? 10:44. What's my agenda? Or my narrative? Because I hear these words a lot, and I'm yet to meet anyone who can tell me what they mean.
Your agenda in every line that you say.
Well, then it'll be really easy for you to explain what it is, won't it? Come on.
You have a very, very left-wing agenda.
Because you just keep saying that. What does it mean?
Anybody who disagrees with you.
I love being disagreed with, Pete. This is going to be my favourite call of the day. What is my agenda?
You have a very left-wing
agenda. What is my agenda, Pete?
You can't
on school dinners.
Your agenda in like 2 or 3 words, James. Can
you? Take 30.
Apart from you are dangerously manipulative with your...
What's my agenda? Come on, Pete, you can do it.
I think I'm done with you, James. Thank you very much.
Pete, mate. Oh, I was really looking forward to finding out what my agenda is. Anyway, there's Pete, who doesn't think that hungry school children should just be fed first, and then we can look at some of the systemic problems behind their hunger second. And that is what I do. If you don't like what you see in the mirror, Pete, I do actually suggest, well, you already told me what you do, and I heartily approve.
The Foreign Secretary has been criticised for suggesting the anti-racism gesture of taking the knee originated on TV's Game of Thrones. Dominic Raab called it a symbol of subjugation and subordination, as our political correspondent Libby Vina reports.
To many, it seemed a natural gesture of solidarity. Young footballers taking the knee ahead of their Premier League games last night. But when asked about it today, the Foreign Secretary seemed almost to mock the idea and said he wouldn't do it.
I understand this sense of frustration and restlessness which is driving the Black Lives Matters movement. I've got to say on this taking the knee thing, which I don't know, maybe it's got a broader history, but seems to be taken from the Game of Thrones, feels to me like a symbol of subjugation and subordination rather than one of liberation and emancipation. But I understand people feel differently about it, so it's a matter of personal choice.
So would you or wouldn't you do it?
Take the knee for 2 people, the Queen and the Missus, when I asked her to marry me.
After weeks of protest following the death of George Floyd in America, the words of Britain's most senior diplomat seemed, well, hardly diplomatic.
I know he's a moron, Gordon is a moron.